Now you're seeing the XHTML document for Matt's Photos page. Believe it or not, this is a pretty simple standard XHTML file. What makes this page unique are the graphics. Up top we have our doc type, XHTML 1.0 transitional. Got an opening head tag. Some meta information which we'll be discussing in a later video. Title tag. A link to an external style sheet. Here is some JavaScript which is controlling the rollover buttons for the main site navigation tabs. Here's a small internal style sheet and the closing head tag. The body of this page mainly consists of div tag containers which are holding our slices in place. Let's take a closer look at one of these div tag containers. This first part is the opening div tag. It's a class div tag and its name is div1. This unique name is what allows the code in the external style sheet to set the height and width for this div tag. We'll look at the style sheet in a few minutes. The second section of code here is an image source attribute. What this line of code is doing, it's telling the visitor's browser to go into Matt's server and look for a folder called All Home Images Up Buttons. And inside that folder, look for an image called home1_1.jpg and then load that image on their browser. Let's take a quick look at this image in Photoshop. Now we're looking at the image our code was referring to in Dreamweaver. Notice the name up top, home1_01.jpg. This was one of the images that was created when I broke our original source file up into slices. Notice it's a flat image, there's no layers, so it's a small image, and it's a JPEG, which is a compressed file for use on the internet. Let's go to Image and Image Size, and we'll see that the size, the width is 950 pixels, which is the width of the web page, and the height is 127. Anytime you're embedding an image in the XHTML document, you must have a width and a height attribute to be W3C compliant. Notice the width is 950 and the height is 127. That's the exact size of our image as we saw in Photoshop. This is setting the height and the width for the image. If I were to change these numbers, it would actually distort our image. This section of code here is our alt attribute. The alt attribute stands for alternative content, and its purpose is to give alternative text for an image if the image for some reason cannot be displayed because of a slow connection, an error in the source attribute, or if the user is hearing impaired and uses a screen reader. All images must contain the alt attribute to be W3C compliant. We'll talk more about the alt attribute in an SEO video later on. Now let's take a look at the external style sheet for this document. This is a pretty simple CSS style sheet and doesn't contain too many rules. We've got some div ID containers up top, some div class containers in the middle. These attributes here are setting a width and a height for the container. This width and height exactly matches the image size that this div will be holding. Each one of these containers has a float left attribute. This means that each container will line up next to each other from the left side of the page. And then there's a few more rules at the bottom, including the rules that are styling some links. But there is one interesting style up top. That's the style for the body tag. The first declaration is setting the background color. The color is 222421. That's a medium to light gray. The second declaration is for a background image called background image 12.jpg. The third declaration will repeat this image across the horizontal axis. And the fourth declaration removes any space between the image and the top of the browser, so the image will be repeating left to right across the top of the browser. Now let's move over to Photoshop and take a look at this background image. I experimented with a bunch of different colors and textures for Matt's background image, and in the end decided that a neutral gray, along with a tough-looking metal rock texture, really enhanced the content of Matt's site. I also applied some of the logos from Matt's bike manufacturers to this image. Now this image is repeating left to right across the top of the user's screen and fading into the background color. So this color right here is the exact color of the background, 222421, and I can set that color in Photoshop. That way it's going to match up exactly and look like it's fading right into the background. After I save this for the web, it'll end up being about 200 pixels wide by about 700 pixels high. To give you an idea of how big this is, there's about 72 pixels in an inch. And now you're looking at the final product, live on my browser in Safari. All 16 slices have been loaded on my browser and held in place with those invisible div tags to give the appearance of one solid continuous image. These pictures in the middle are buttons to enlargements. And if I zoom out, you can see the background image is repeating from the left to the right side of the screen at the top of my browser, and then fading into the background color.